I got the music in me, knew it simply had to be my destiny. I'm blessed to be the best within my CNHEND. Please believe not Ninja Gaiden. I'm not the guy to fight with them lightning. They come in dumb and I leave them enlightened.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG on the YouTube.com down there. We like magic, and today I've got a deck for you that you've been asking for since we got our very first look at Amonkhet. Today we're going to talk about Naya Exert. Well, the core of this deck is basically a red-white human shell that's fairly low to the ground, but does play some mid-range options and looks to exploit Exert with Always Watching, which is probably the best Anthem effect in the format. We're going to play a whole playset of it. I'm always watching, Grabowski. Well, Always Watching has seen varying levels of import since it first debuted in Standard, but now I think it's actually more relevant than it's ever been, Usually, the Vigilance feels ancillary on this, it's just extra gravy, but in this deck, the +1/+1 almost takes a back seat to the Vigilance. That's how relevant the Vigilance is. Obviously, it works really well with Exert, and if you haven't somehow seen this interaction yet, Exert and Vigilance work exactly like you want them to together, You can just exert willy-nilly without a care because you know that creature's not going to tap anyway. Don't have to worry about it not untapping because it never tapped in the first place. Always Watching does kind of shoehorn us into an aggressive strategy here, but we don't mind that too much. We end up playing 26 creatures in the deck, and 22 of them are humans. We are playing a human sub-theme here, but again, we have some mid-range options, and we're looking to exploit Exert. So let me go ahead and show you those Exert creatures here. We're going to play 4 creatures with Exert in all to make Always Watching as cool as possible, basically. But some of these Exert creatures people are really, really excited about, and a couple of them are sneakily good. So let me take a look at these with you real quick here. We're going to play 4 copies of Glorybound Initiate and 4 copies of Gustwalker to start things off here. First of all, Gustwalker is the one that's sneakily good. This card doesn't look like much when you first look at it, but a 2-mana 3/3 flyer once it exerts is a pretty good investment just by itself. But once you get an Always Watching out, a 2-mana 4/4 flying Vigilance is insane. That's a really, really good investment. And Gustwalker just gets incredible. So Gustwalker's a lot better than it looks, and it's nice to have a little bit extra flying in the deck as well. There's not a whole lot of evasion here, so just to have an extra creature with flying is always good. You also get to make Star Wars jokes, i.e. Luke Gustwalker, so there's that too. But Glorybound Initiate is definitely the one that people are more excited about out of these two, definitely. Obviously, the trick is you go Glorybound Initiate on turn 2, then turn 3 Always Watching, suddenly you're swinging with a 5/5 lifelink. When did that happen? Oh my god. So that is good, and that turns out that in practice that is pretty dope. So just swinging 5 lifelink out of nowhere on turn 3 is nice. 10 points of life swing, they take 5 or one of their creatures dies and you gain 5. That's just really good. No matter what point of the game you're swinging a 5/5 Vigilance lifelink. Doesn't matter if it's on turn 3 or not. That tends to be pretty good. The other 2 Exert creatures we're going to play here are 4 copies of Glorybringer and 2 copies of Combat Celebrant. Now, Glorybringer is the only non-human creature in the deck, but it's definitely worth playing, especially in an Always Watching deck, and especially with the reason that we're Naya. There's one card that's a big reason for us being Naya, and Glorybringer works out with her pretty well too. So Glorybringer is just really, really good reach. Comes down out of nowhere with haste. Flame Tongue Kavu's a guy, gets stuff out of the way for your other creatures. Flies over for 4, the same turn you play it. Just nothing to not like about Glorybringer. And if you've got an Always Watching, of course, it's a 5-mana 5/5 flying haste Vigilance that kills a guy. That's ridiculous. And also, it'll kill a guy the next turn. And the turn after that. That's freaking crazy. As far as Celebrant goes, this is one of the, more flimsy cards in the deck. The 1 toughness, especially for the 3-mana investment, is not great. It's weak to Walking Ballista, it's weak to Magma Spray. All that is true, but dice to removal is obviously not the best argument in the world. And if you can just wait 1 turn, you can play this and then next turn swing in with it, then you don't have to do anything extra. Just exert it. You don't have to get in for combat damage. You don't have to, go unblocked or anything like that. You just swing and exert, and regardless of whether or not Combat Celebrant survives that first combat step, you'll get a second one, which is super amazing with Exert, especially considering you get to untap all your guys. Choose whether or not to, swing in again, or just keep them untapped. Say you don't have an Always Watching out. Sometimes you'll want to make that decision, but very often if you do get a second attack step in, that's just curtains, especially if you've got a Glorybringer or Initiate or something. It's just ridiculous the amount of damage you can do in 1 turn because of Combat Celebrant. I think it's worth playing in the deck, if only for that reason, but hey, also extra human synergy points, so there's that too. Now that's 13 creatures with Exert in a 26 creature deck, so literally half the creatures Exert. Obviously, the other half don't, but they all contribute to our human sub-theme, and they help us hit sort of a critical mass of creatures so that, again, we can make Always Watching actually worth playing. So let's talk about the rest of the creatures in the deck, and in terms of curve, I'll start at the bottom because the whole team's here. Terrible pun, but it's true. Besides Glorybringer and like one other card, most of our creatures cost 1 and 2 mana, so most of our stuff is literally at the bottom. We'll start with the 1-drops here. We're going to play 4 copies of Thraben Inspector and 4 copies of Expedition Envoy. Well, Envoy doesn't really need much explanation. It's just a 1-mana, 2-power guy, and it's also human. So I think just based on those stats, we should probably play it. As far as Inspector Gadget, she lets us draw a card a little bit later on in the game if we're screwed or, we're in top deck mode or something. And that's just invaluable to a deck like this that even though it does play stuff on curve all the way to 5, it can still run out of steam if it gets into sort of a board stall situation. So being able to draw a card is really, really important. Now the reason we want to play all those 1-drops is not just because of Always Watching. Yeah, we want to make it better, but we're also playing a 2-drop here that really pulls the room together as far as all these human synergies we're trying to make work. And that is Thalia's Lieutenant, which we'll play a whole playset of. Again, this is one of the big reasons we need all these 1-drops. If we play 1-drop into Thalia's Lieutenant, we'll be making the 1-drop bigger. That's good. And we'll have the maximum amount of turns to make Thalia's Lieutenant herself a bigger creature. It shouldn't be too hard. Playing 22 humans in the deck, so everything you play subsequently should make her bigger other than Glorybringer. But also, she's a really, really good top deck, too. If you've got a relatively big board, you're stalled out, and you've got a Glorybound Initiate or a Gustwalker or 2, maybe even a Combat Celebrant. Well, Thalia's Lieutenant can come down and make most of your team a little bit bigger, which is nice, especially when combined with Always Watching. You'll just have like 6/6 lifelinkers and 5/5 flyers. It's pretty decent considering you only invested a couple of mana into those creatures initially. And to finish off the creatures in the deck, I'm just going to play 1 copy of Samut, sort of experimentally, but I do like the card, We don't want to play a bunch of copies because we're already playing a 5-drop in Glorybringer, and we want to kind of keep the curve low. We don't want to congest it at 5-drop too much. And 5/5-drops is an awful lot, but I think Samut's worth playing for a couple of reasons. First of all, human. Gotta get that out of the way. Swinging 6 haste is also pretty decent. Being able to flash her in is good, Also, she's got that weird untap a creature ability that looks like completely out of place, but it's obviously meant to work with Exert creatures. If we don't have an Always Watching out, we can untap our Glorybringer. We can untap our Initiate. That's just good to have, too, Oh, and also, one more thing. Giving all your guys haste is great, too. You got to Samut out. You play your Glorybound. Well, just swing 4 or 5 haste with lifelink out of nowhere. That's also good, and especially Combat Celebrant. Gotta talk about that. If you've got a Samut out and you can play a Celebrant and top deck a Celebrant or something, well, you can go ahead and swing in with haste. There's not really boo they can do about that. You can just immediately exert the thing and essentially get another attack step. The same turn you play Celebrant. That's really powerful. So we've talked about Samut. Let me talk about the other green card in the deck. There's only a couple, but I think it's worth it to play 2 copies of Arlinn Kord here. Seriously. First of all, we're fairly thin at the 4-drop slot, and we want something to bridge the gap in between these 2 and 3 cost creatures and enchantments and stuff, and these 5-mana creatures like Glorybringer. Sometimes on turn 4 you'll go like 2-drop into 2-drop, which is nice. You'll use all your mana efficiently that way. But it's also nice to be able to just drop Arlinn on turn 4 and say you don't have an Always Watching. Well, now you got something else that can give your Exert guys vigilance. That's nice. It also gives those creatures a boost, which is pretty sweet. It can be a creature factory against control decks when you resolve it. That's awesome. It can bolt stuff for you. That's cool. It can give all of your creatures an Anthem effect. That's also dope. If you get to her ultimate, things get crazy. So everything Arlinn does is really, really good in this deck. And she's especially good with stuff like Initiate and Glorybringer, 6/6 Glorybringer, swinging Vigilance is really, really crazy. Not to mention, by the way, you can do that on curve. Turn 4 Arlinn and turn 5 Glorybringer, boop. Vigilance, flying 6/6 dude that kills a guy. It's just ridiculous. If you haven't been able to find your Always Watching yet, it's sort of another sort of almost Always Watching. Another mostly watching, we'll call it, And she just does so many other good things that I think she's definitely worth at least the 2 of. We're going to finish off the main deck with some removal, because it'd be silly not to play at least some removal. You know, we can't just play nothing but creatures and always watching. We could, but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't recommend it. So we're going to start with 4 copies of Harness Lightning here, and we're going to end with 1 copy of Declaration in Stone. That's right, just 5 removal elements in the deck. But again, I just want to play a little smidge of removal. Now, Harness Lightning is instant speed, so that's cool, and it's usually just 3 damage to a creature. You know, get that guy out of the way, kill your snake, whatever, and swing in with my guys. Very welcome in the deck to be able to do that. And again, on turn 4, say you don't have an Arlinn, you know, I've already said you can go like 2-drop, 2-drop on turn 4, but you can also go like 2-drop, leave mana up for a Harness, or just go ahead and blow a dude away, get an attack step in. So Harness isn't valuable in this deck. It's got a few different modes, you know, just like, oh, I don't want to die, so kill that guy. You know, I don't want you to develop your plan, so kill that guy. Or, I need to get through with my dudes, kill that guy. Just 2 mana kill a dude is always welcome. And it's got another mode on it in this deck. We can kill like smaller dudes and leave an energy behind for the Aether Hub and the mana base, so we can more easily get the green we need sometimes. And the Declaration in Stone is just kind of a catch-all. You know, it can kill like huge dudes we can't otherwise kill. It's hoses like token strategies, you know, kill like all your tokens of the same name, but you only get the 1 clue. So, and you know, go wide strategies aren't necessarily super prevalent right now, but we do see some Gideons. We even see some Nissa Voice of Zendikar. So being able to do that against tokens builds is somewhat valuable right now, but mostly it's just a catch-all that can kill huge guys. We're playing 23 lands in the deck, and there's 9 green sources in here, in case you're wondering, but that should be enough considering we're only playing 3 green cards in the main deck, and they only cost the 1 green. You know, I'm tempted to put like Prowling Serpapard on the board, but it's going to be really tough to make 2 green with this mana base, especially considering 4 of those green sources are Aether Hub. So, but we're mostly trying to produce white mana. You know, we want white mana on turn 1, turn 2, and on turn 3, we ideally want 2 white mana. So that is what we're mostly focused on here, and we make it pretty well. Here's our sideboard right here, and it's a fairly budget sideboard. You know, you could put in like 4 Gideons, which you know, a lot of people are doing in just the red-white version of this deck that's a little lower to the ground. A lot of people are putting in 4 Gideons, but that would double the budget of the deck, and I didn't feel like doing that to you or me. So, you know, if you have the dough or the cards already, Ally of Zendikar could slot right into this board pretty easily, but I've got a little bit more budget here. You know, the 3 Fragmentize and the 2 Byforce are mostly to deal with, obviously, artifacts, but specifically Mardu vehicles for the most part. You know, you can take out a bunch of different stuff in vehicles with these cards and not really sacrifice much in the way of, you know, curve or mana. You can play a Byforce or a Fragmentize and still have mana to play other stuff that turn. That's important. Magma Spray, ditto. You can play a Magma Spray and still have 2 or 3 mana open in the early turns to play something. It's really good in the mirror, and it says goodbye to Scrap Heap forever. So that's important. Declaration in Stone, we'll play another one just as another catch-all against decks that play big creatures, green-black counters, and stuff like that. Make a Stand is in there instead of Blossoming Defense, because I don't trust that we have enough green in the deck to play a bunch of green cards. I think it's much easier to make the white mana, so I'll go with Make a Stand. And it also gives all of our creatures a buff, gives all of our creatures indestructible, works against Fumigate, where Blossoming Defense doesn't, so there's that too. There's some reasons to play Make a Stand. It's not terrible. And then the 3 Cast Out to round things off here. Just another catch-all card. You know, this can take out stuff we have no other way of taking out, like Planeswalkers, enchantments, and stuff. So just Cast Out is really nice. And here are your power rankings here. Final score of Nintendo 64, not too bad at all. And yeah, we don't have a whole lot of resiliency, so make sure you don't overextend. And we're not very versatile at all. You know, we're very one-track mind. We just want to play a good creature on curve every turn up till turn 5, and just keep smashing face from then on. Not super versatile. Don't have a whole bunch of game plans or anything. But we make up for the lacks in those numbers by being a pretty fast deck that can fill the curve on all ends. You know, we've got awesome stuff from 1 to 5 on the curve. We don't let up. You know, again, a lot of aggro decks have run out of steam in the mid-game. This deck doesn't, and it's got great top decks, too. You know, we can top deck a Glorybringer in Wreck Face. We can top deck an Arlinn in Wreck Face. We can top deck a Thalia's Lieutenant, and there's a lot of good plays out of top decking that, too. So, deck has a lot going for it. Top deck's better than the average aggro deck, and stays in the game longer than the average aggro deck, too, without sacrificing a whole lot of speed. And it all comes at a pretty decent price point, too. The deck is only about $125 altogether on TCG Player right now. And yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call that budget, but a lot of the best decks in the format are $250, $300 or more right now. Look at the price tag on Mardu. Compare it to this, and it looks a lot better than Mardu, especially considering we're not playing any Gideons in this build or anything. So 125 is not that much for a deck that's gonna win you a bunch of games and is an awful lot of fun to play with, and it's fairly straightforward. But I'm tapped out for now. That's all I've got to say about this one, for now at least. But let me know what we missed down there in the comments. There's some stuff I'd like to play that I didn't find any room for Thalia herself. I'd like to play that in the 75 somewhere. Didn't find the room, but I probably should. You know, I'm sure there's other stuff you'd like us to play, so just let me know how you'd change this deck down there in the comments section. I'm always all ears, you know. We're a community. Let's build decks together. So I'm always open to your suggestions. But what are we doing next time? That's important too. Well, next time, Green-Black Constrictor's got another chance. I'm going to keep putting that deck on the docket until it makes it. And hopefully it'll make it sometime before game day, because Green-Black Constrictor is looking like it might be, you know, in the middle of a comeback story. You know, Cinderella Snake. You know, so a lot of people have eyes towards that deck, and I want to give you my build of that. So that one is on the ballot for next time. But also on the ballot for next time is a deck I've been having a lot of fun with, brewing up here, and is really weird and has probably the best name of any deck in a long time. I could also bring you next time Blue-Black Trial of Tentacles. If you couldn't tell by the name, because you haven't gotten over how awesome the name is yet, it's basically a Crush of Tentacles deck that tries to get extra value out of trials and cartouches. Like in this deck, we'll play Trial of Ambition, easily the best trial, and we'll play cartouches and stuff so we can pop it back to our hand, play it again. Crush of Tentacles obviously pops both trials and cartouches back to our hand, so we can get like crazy value out of trials. And Crush is just awesome defensively and can sometimes leave us with a huge octopus, which we can, by the way, enchant with cartouches. So it's a really, really fun, neat concept for a deck. Been having a lot of fun brewing it up. Let me know if you want to see that next time. But back to the present. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you please hit the like button. Just thumbs up the video. Helps me more than most of the stuff you could possibly do on YouTube, and it takes the least amount of time. So help me out with that. Sub if you're new. Hit the notification button, the bell, to make sure you get all the deck techs when they come in. You can support us on Patreon if you feel like it. You don't have to. If you feel like it, pop over to patreon.com/SBMTG. Check out our rewards. You know, we got some good stuff going on right now. And you can follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev. Man, we have come a long way. It used to be like, share, subscribe. See you guys next time. We got a lot of stuff to talk about at the end of videos now. And that's because we've come a long way, and that's because of you guys. Appreciate you supporting us. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.